time, Refocused Radio. We are here once again, and guess what? We have another show lined up for y'all today. If you're watching this online, our guest, her information will be on the ticker tape. We have her two on there talking to Danielle Reiff. She has a lot of information for us today. You can go to her website, peacebuildersunite.com. Again, that's peacebuildersunite.com. She is someone that you really want to get to know because she is a former diplomat with over 20 plus years advancing human rights and helping communities heal around the world. She is in Arizona, so we're going to have some little breaking news all about American Democracy Summit that is there for multiple days. So we're going to check down where she's in currently in Phoenix. So I can't wait to talk about that. But first and foremost, going back to a little bit about her, not only has she been helping communities around, she now has a up and coming book that's going to be coming out in the near future, Overcoming Information Chaos. And we're going to learn a lot about what she does with that project and also more about her whole overall project of Peace Builders on her website. Once again, it's peacebuildersunite.com. So let me cut right to the chase and say, Danielle, thank you for your time today. How you doing?
I'm great. It's good to see you. Good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I appreciate you clearing your schedule. You're out traveling and you still want to do the interview. So I appreciate squeezing us in your schedule. Tell us a little bit before we get into your professional background. What is this American Democracy Summit that's going on in Phoenix, Arizona? Give us a little background on that.
I'd be happy to. The American Democracy Summit is amazing. It's organized by a group called represent.us. And it's been going since before the pandemic. They did take a bit of a break during the pandemic, but have been back for the past few years. And it's a place where democracy reformers and activists from across the country come together to talk about how to deepen our democracy. It's not a partisan event. I haven't seen a single sign or person, touting Republican or Democratic values or platforms. These are non-governmental organizations, grassroots organizations, people who are committed to making sure that our country is governed by the people, for the people, and that we have the most, the deepest democracy we can possibly have. It's been a thrill to be here all week.
When you think about the massive amount of people that are there, not just the speakers. I mean, the speakers list is too long for me to go through, probably take the whole show, but they're spread out through multiple days. What do you feel people are kind of taking in so far? Because I understand there's still going to be activity today and tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the big trends in democracy, it's an innovation in how to do democracy. It's been growing in popularity years, but it's called deliberative democracy. And deliberative democracy is really all about taking the democratic model as we know it in the US, which is very competitive. It's very focused on citizens as voters, so very focused on the opportunity we have to go to the polls once every 2 years or once every 4 years. And moving beyond that to create opportunities for citizens to actually participate in policy deliberations directly and not just through our elected representatives. So there is an innovation in deliberative democracy called citizens' assemblies. And a few years ago, there was a presentation at the American Democracy Summit about citizens' assemblies. And afterwards, they became, much more popular in the US, and interest in them continues to grow. Should I tell you what a citizens' assembly is?
Yeah, sure.
It's very exciting. This is one of the issues that I work on. So a citizens' assembly is held in any place, it's usually led by a government body, whether it's a local government or a state government or even the federal government could do it. And there's generally one policy question at hand, how does our city, for example, Los Angeles is considering doing one on how does our city recover from the fires and make decisions about how to recover in a way that makes sense to everybody, in a way that's equitable and fair. And rather than letting elected representatives decide that in a room on their own with citizens observing, a citizens assembly collects a representative sample of the community itself. So literally there's a lottery, and, you know, people from different political backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different parts of the city or the state or the country come together. They are given the latest research and data and information about that issue. So it's a way for everybody in the room, no matter what their views are, to be working off of the same information. And then after they're briefed on all the latest sort of knowledge and research about the issue, then they go into facilitated discussions about the issues. And they generally stay for a couple of days. Sometimes it's a whole weekend, with very strong facilitation to help make sure people are building trust along the way. They're having genuine exchanges. In these citizens assemblies, you don't find people yelling at each other or, you know, canceling each other or insulting each other. It's amazing. The research shows that when people get together in these citizens assemblies, not only does it help to overcome polarization and help a community to identify policy positions that are satisfying to everybody or to the grand majority, but they also build trust and they build community. And when these things are all finished, time after time after time, participants say, wow, I didn't know that everyday citizens could come together like this and really grow so close and have such important conversations and make real policy recommendations for how to solve some of the toughest issues they face. So that's what a citizens assembly is. And it's one of the things that we have talked about at the American Democracy Summit over the years, but I just today attended a session on it about how it's expanding here in the US. It really is the future of democracy.
Once again, listening on Refocused Radio and watching us online, talking to our guest, Danielle Reiff. Go to her website, peacebuildersunite.com. Again, that's peacebuildersunite.com. Appreciate that information that you just shared with us. When it comes to your career as a former diplomat that spent, like I said earlier in the show, over 20 years advancing human rights around the world. I mean, you've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, not to be cliche, but you also seen opportunities to not just plant good seed of opportunity, but to actually create systems that will be beneficial to communities. When you look back on your time, I mean, even with USAID, what were some of the learning points that you discovered looking back, and what are some of the opportunities that you see still present in the future?
It's such a good question. I just want to point out you're asking the smartest question when you ask about systems. A lot of people think about peace and they think about peace building and they think, oh, these are just hippies. It's really unrealistic. You know, peace is just get together and sing together and hold hands. People think it's not serious, but peace building, as you point out in your question, an important piece of it is about building systems, because democratic systems are institutions. One of the most important reasons they exist is to provide a place where society can resolve its disputes and resolve its disagreements without resort to political violence. So in theory, if our Congress can come to consensus or compromise or some agreement on a way forward and the people accept that, then, you know, we don't have a reason to fight each other. But when our systems are broken and they're not able to resolve our conflicts, then people are tempted to take matters into their own hands. So democratic systems are absolutely critical to peace building. And I've been involved in a lot of democratic reforms over the years in different countries. I like to talk about the Republic of Georgia in the former Soviet Union. So when I arrived in Georgia, it was 2012. And they had had one of these peaceful revolutions. It was the Rose Revolution after the fall of the Soviet Union that brought a new leader to power, a younger leader in power who wanted to build democratic systems in the wake of the end of the Cold War. And his name was Saakashvili. He did amazing things to transform the political culture. Corruption decreased. The police started to do what police are supposed to do. The government systems became stronger. The government had not even been able to provide electricity and basic services during a period during the collapse of the Soviet Union. So he got the government functioning again, and it was very exciting. But he took it to a certain level, but to be a true democracy, it needed to go even further. And when I was there, I had just arrived when a new government was elected through the ballot box. It was the first time in the history of Georgia that there had been a change of political administration through the ballot box, that the citizens had elected a new political party, and the new political party assumed power. And they were very excited about democratic reforms. And so they engaged in constitutional reforms. They empowered local governments. Previously, there had been a lot of political appointments. And so the president really controlled a lot of what was happening in the country because he appointed everybody who was doing the work in the local governments, and everybody did what he wanted them to do. Same with the judiciary. The judiciary was really controlled by the president and his party and wasn't necessarily delivering justice to all. It was delivering justice consistent with what the president's party wanted. And so we also engaged in reform of the judiciary, helping to build systems so that the judiciary could deliver justice, fairly across the country and really deliver real justice. We engaged in civil service reform. For example, at that time, people who worked in the civil service in Georgia at that time didn't even have job descriptions. I mean, they were just hired because they knew somebody and they went to work and they got a paycheck, but they didn't even have a job description. They sort of did what made sense, what was politically expedient. So we helped them draft job descriptions and roles and responsibilities for everybody in the civil service so that they could have a nonpartisan civil service like we do in the US. So that was a really exciting time helping the Georgians through that democratic transition period.
And speaking of transition, it'd be a nice segue talking about what it takes to have this mindset of the quote unquote peace begins within. Because when you look over top level, top view, it's a lot of things you can see. But when you're on the ground level, when you're in the field, you're up close and personal. Based on your experience, where you've been able to see the different challenges with communities and creating, like we've been saying, these systems for them and helping them revamp certain things to make things better and run better. What are some of the things you see or has been part of the journey of seeing how inner peace, what it actually looks like in those communities and on a personal level with individuals?
It's so important. So one of the things I've learned throughout my career promoting democracy around the world is that you can have fabulous systems, very well-designed systems, but if people don't have integrity, the people in the systems don't have integrity, and they're manipulating the systems for their own private benefit, then the systems are being misused and they don't work the way they're intended to. And so for me, this really speaks to the importance of, we need to bring certain core values with us into the systems that we're a part of, and to the extent that we can have integrity and healing within our own hearts and souls, it's easier for us to really serve the common good, be servant leaders, be peace builders, helping to bring services and benefits and peace to not only our own lives but our communities as well. And so that's just a critically important piece of building peace is to work on your own self. It's really, I think about peace. I think it's spiritual in nature at the end of the day, because it requires us to get beyond our own narrow self-interests. I have to go into a community, and instead of trying to get as much as I can for myself, I have to think about other people, and I have to think about how our systems are designed, whether they actually serve all groups, whether they're actually serving the community as a whole and not just my own interests. And so that's a spiritual thing in my personal opinion. And to the extent that we have peace within our own selves, I think it's easier to operate in that mindset and with that approach to systems building and peace building.
You listen on Refocused Radio, talking to our guest today, Danielle Reiff. Go to her website, peacebuildersunite.com. That's peacebuildersunite.com. You've been saying the word peace throughout the show, and this whole community that we have with Refocused Radio. I always been teasing the story all years because people understood where it started to where it is now. It's like you could never told me that I would have to believe that, because back in 2017, we started in the barbershop. And I always tell this story, but I won't bore you because I know my audience is like, man, you said that 10,000 times. I'm going to say it real quickly. We talking about peace. We're talking about inner work. We're talking about building community. When we started the show, the main comment people were saying, man, it felt like I was part of the discussion in the barbershop because I heard the clippers going and it just felt like I was there eavesdropping on conversation. What was the key word I just said? Conversation. We have a lot of high energy dialogue going on around the world, and a lot of it is conversation, but conversation without good communication in place is just a lot of noise. So my next question for you is, in your book, Information Chaos, what does that actually mean to the reader that's going to pick up that book and read it? And why is it such a threat to peaceful communities today?
It's so important. You know, people talk about the fact that we're in a post-truth world now, and I feel that. I don't know if you feel that, but I'm a fairly well-educated person. I try to stay well-informed. I'm an activist. I care about my country. I care about the world. I care about these issues, and so I try to follow the news. But even myself and the 14 other people that I wrote this book with, experts in different angles of media literacy and disinformation and peace building, we all agreed that even we, with our expertise and experience, struggle sometimes to understand what's real and what's not real. I'll give you an example, something that I learned just at the conference this week. There was a judge in Wisconsin. I don't know if you read about it. Her name was Hannah Dugan, and she was in the courtroom, and there was a migrant in her courtroom, and she asked the migrant to go out the back door. And the way I heard the story, and the way I think a lot of people heard the story, was that this judge was, being sneaky and ushering this migrant out a back door so that they wouldn't get arrested. During the summit this week, I was speaking to someone who works very closely in the judicial community, and has spoken with this judge and heard the real story. So the ICE agent came in, the migrant was in the courtroom, they were both in the courtroom, and so she ushered them out and said, I don't know how to resolve this issue. You both need to go speak to the chief judge whose office is on a different floor. So they left her courtroom and they rode in the elevator together and they went to talk to another official in the courthouse. And yet, so that's according to people who are close to the situation, that's what actually happened. But the story we all heard was that somehow she was being very sneaky and trying to hide a migrant so that the migrant wouldn't be detained. And so these are examples of different stories, and you don't know what to believe. It's often very difficult. And what I know is that if we're going to get together and figure out what's in our best interest collectively, we have to have a shared understanding of what's actually real and what's not real. We have to have a shared base of facts. And there are facts. Facts are real. Some people say, oh, no, it's all relative. But no, there are facts. I'm sitting in a hotel room right now. That is true. There is, you can say all you want that I'm in my house in Washington, D.C., but I'm not. I'm in a hotel room in Phoenix, Arizona. And so there are facts, and we just have to be savvier and more responsible as citizens to dig deeper and to not just accept what's given to us. We have to be looking for primary sources. We have to be finding people who are close to what's happening and asking them, what did you actually see? What did you actually experience? We have to learn how to dig around for research, or even simple Google searches to see if there are other news outlets reporting the same thing, or what the different stories are before we share information. And so if we want to stop the spread of disinformation and this, heal this terrible post-truth world where it's difficult to understand what's reality and what's not, we have to, each and every one of us, take greater responsibility for what we're sharing and what we're consuming, and we just have to be a lot more rigorous about that. So that's the thesis of my book, Overcoming Information Chaos. Nobody's coming to save us from this problem that we have in our society. Even if we get some sort of regulatory change or change in the laws, it's going to be really hard to get. First of all, it's going to take time, and it's not going to solve all the problems. So waiting for laws to change is not an immediate solution. We just have to take responsibility for ourselves and for our own communities, and create communities also that are media literate. And until we do that, we're going to really struggle to build peace and to come together and solve our problems collectively.
And when you mentioned social media, one thing that's starting to become popular now today in some spaces or some communities, if you will, is that there's a lot of social media detox. A lot of people are like, you know what, I'm putting my phone down. I'm going to see some sun. I'm going to get some fresh air, and I'm going to just enjoy life. I'm not going to just scroll. It's become more popular than ever. What would you say to everyday people, especially those who might be overwhelmed with social media presence, and better prioritizing how they use their online spaces?
Absolutely. One of the things we recommend in the book for people who are struggling with their social media usage is to pretend you're an alien looking down on how you use social media, or looking down on what's happening in our society. And if that alien was taking notes, how much time would that alien say you're on social media? What would that alien say you're actually watching? What sites do you go to? Where do you get your information? How much time do you spend on the different sites? And you have to step back and really observe yourself, observe your patterns, and recognize where your own patterns may be unhealthy, and then be really intentional in creating changes. And I agree with you so wholeheartedly. If we could just put our phones down and spend more time interacting with each other, we were already starting to fragment as a society before the pandemic. And during the pandemic, it got so much worse. We sat alone in our houses and we only interacted virtually, and we became really disconnected from each other, and our skills got rusty. We got rusty at having just everyday conversation, and we got rusty at having tough conversations. We got scared of each other. And we're at a point now where we need to re-engage each other in real life. We need to spend more time together. We need to remember and practice how to have conversations and tough conversations without hurting each other and yelling and criticizing. Yeah, it's so important. And it takes courage. I say that, but I know that it's not easy. I myself have struggled with social anxiety over the years, and just to say, to get out of the house and to go to a community organization or a community event, just sit down and chat with your neighbors. It sometimes takes a lot of courage, but that's what's going to help us overcome this challenge in the end. And I believe that the grand majority of people out there are doing the best they can. And I think we have a deep human need to interact with each other and to spend time with each other. And we're all craving that. So if it helps anybody to actually get out of the house and start to interact more personally, just know that everybody else is nervous about it too, and it's not easy for anybody. But if you can have the courage to actually go out and try, it can be really rewarding, really rewarding. If you find the safe spaces and just make an effort, it ends up being really rewarding a lot of the time.
And courage is a good word, because without courage, no one is able to go outside the comfort zone. And if you're in your comfort zone, it's easier to say, not my problem. And that's part of the problem, that people think avoiding the problem is actually solving. It's not. Once again, listen.
It's not. Wait, can I say one more thing? Sorry, I know we have time limits here, but I just want to say that this is really about refocusing. I know your program is called I Am Refocused, and it's about picking up again after hard times, going and keep trying and keep doing, trying different ways until you figure it out. And I think this is a way for us to refocus as an American society. We haven't refocused after the pandemic. We haven't refocused after all the troubles we've had politically. And this is a way for us to refocus. Just put down the phones, get back into community and reconnect with each other. So I just wanted to make that connection between what we're talking about and the whole purpose of your show.
Definitely. I appreciate that. And I wanted to get one more question before we sign off officially. And that is, being a former diplomat and having all the experience you had traveling and seeing different cultures and being inside different communities, what's some of the challenges that you see women face in leadership in regards to diplomacy and public service? And what some of the things that you can see will benefit recognizing women in leadership in order to push through the noise?
I'm so glad you asked that question. Thank you. It's such an important one these days when there are so many attacks on women and women's rights and so many different groups, but women included. So I've found in my own career that sometimes as a woman leader, you show up and you're not taken seriously. I'm also a fairly happy person. I'm lighthearted. I smile, I laugh. And I think sometimes I would go to diplomatic events and people would look at me and think, oh, she can't be the boss. She can't be the leader because, she certainly doesn't look like the serious person, that's going into the heavy negotiations. But, diplomats and leaders can look a lot of different ways. There's no one way that a diplomat's supposed to look. And so, that's sort of on the easy end. On the tough end, one of the issues that I worked on a lot while I was a diplomat was women's political participation in leadership. In all the countries where I worked, there was a new generation of women firsts rising up. I met the first female minister of justice in a few countries, the first head of the Supreme Court that was a woman in Georgia. So many female firsts. I worked with closely and enjoyed that. But women in politics in particular are subject to an incredible amount of violence, threats, online threats, and intimidation. Um, I used to think before I did this work, I used to think, oh, we're in the 21st century. Look, women can go to work now and do so many things. And on the surface, it appears that we've achieved some level of, women's liberation, and we're approaching equality in some ways. But the reality is there's still some very deeply entrenched cultural norms around, a lot of people don't think women can and should be leaders. And there's backlash. There's a lot of backlash when women step up to lead. And so one of the things I think everybody can do to help that is really just encourage the women around you to lean into leadership when they want to and when they're able to. If you're in conversations where people are denigrating women or making fun of them, insulting them, whether you agree with their politics or not, it doesn't matter. We shouldn't be speaking about women or anybody else or our leaders in the ways that sometimes I hear people doing. So anyway, treat everybody with dignity and respect, and let people be themselves and do the best they can without so much criticism. And it's not an easy thing, but we are making progress. But everybody can help by creating safe environments for women to actually lean in and be leaders.
Once again, listen on Refocused Radio and watching us online, talking to our guest today, Danielle Reiff. Go to her website, peacebuildersunite.com. And don't forget, she has an upcoming book that you can see on the website is coming out soon, Overcoming Information Chaos. You can get that, I'm sure, anywhere books are sold, but definitely go to her website for more updates on that. And with that said, I want to say to you, Danielle, thank you for your time.
This has been a pleasure. Thank you so much.